You mentioned earlier in the interview that you weren't finding much intelligence in academia. Can you speak to academia and the nature of these institutions, which have the largest amounts of research happening? What are you seeing there in terms of their approach to breaking down siloed narratives or status quo to find, more interesting truth?
You see, when I entered science, I was under the illusion that it's all about merit, that it's not about showing off. It's about discovering something substantive, and then once you discover it, everyone will accept it, and it will be a great contribution to our knowledge. That was the narrative that I got from reading books, textbooks about how how physics went through early on. But now, in retrospect, more than 40 years after that, uh, and by the way, I lived through about half of modern physics, the history of modern physics. So I started modern physics when it was half its current age, which makes me a good spectator, being able to gauge what really is going on. And what I see is that, you know, academia was initially constructed in a way that you give tenure to individuals based on their accomplishments, and that would free them from the burden of being liked or everyone agreeing with them. They could explore new territories of knowledge that are very often foreign to most people. They feel uncomfortable when you tell them that not everything in the sky is rocks, because they are still in the Stone Age where everything in the sky must be stones. We know that we send space probes out there, and so other civilizations might have done the same. Why is that a heresy? And so the point is that academia was constructed to allow the freedom to think outside the beaten path, and that's the idea of tenure. But what you find in reality is that once people get tenure, they are all about virtue signaling, about showing off, showing that they are smart, because they need to get funding to their students, postdocs, so they need to build echo chambers that repeat their mantra, and they expect the people that work with them to repeat their mantras, not to violate their dogma or doctrine. And as a result, what you end up is in a situation where you have these silos, as you mentioned, that people belong to a narrative that was known for a while, and they feel that their ego is tied up with that narrative, and that they want to promote that narrative with everyone they work with, so that they will get more funding, they will get honors and awards. So it's all about showing off and demonstrating to your peers that you're smart. But that's not really the reason to do scholarship. The reason should be to understand, especially in context of physics, to understand the physical reality in the context of science. So how can you have the mainstream of theoretical physics for nearly 50 years working on a concept of exodimensions, on supersymmetry and so forth? These are ideas that are the foundation of string theory, and we have no experimental test to validate the path that we're taking. There is nothing that says you're taking the right path. You can go on this path forever, but you want to know whether this path leads anywhere, or should you have taken a different path. And the fact that it's celebrated in academia, that people got honors awards for just showing that they're smart without explaining nature, to me illustrates the unfortunate fate of academic life, that is all about showing off and demonstrating that you are smart, but it's not about understanding nature in the context of the sciences. And so I feel that we're missing the point. Now, on top of that, I belong to Harvard University. I have three narratives to my identity. One is I was born in Israel. Second, I'm Jewish. And third, I'm a scientist. And finally, I'm a member of the Harvard University professors sort of club, so to speak. And all of these facets of my existence, my identity, were under attack over the past 2 years. you know. And I'm entirely proud of my roots. I will not apologize for any of these traits, for being born in Israel, for being Jewish, being a scientist, or being at Harvard University. And I believe, and I actually criticized, the politics in Israel. I criticized the politics at Harvard. And I spoke with who is now the president of Harvard, and after October 7th, and said, here are the ways that Harvard should improve. Because what happened was that politics and the far progressive left ideas were introduced to campus, and that is not a good way to maintain scholarship. Politics should be out of campus, because you are getting students that come from homes that represent, half of the country that is conservative, and you should not introduce a political narrative into scholarship, because you alienate those students, even if they don't tell you that. The same is true about faculty hires. And I think what Harvard suffers right now is a result of this unfortunate approach that was taken over the past decade or two. And we shouldn't have gone this path, okay? And so, just to summarize my answer to you, in the context of science or scholarship in general, we should care about the subject that we are studying, not about showing off and demonstrating that we are smart. That's not the objective. And in the context of scholarship more broadly, we should not bring politics into the camp. Of course, we should listen to each other and respect different views, and there should be diversity of opinions. And there shouldn't be a political narrative that favors one extreme of the political map. And I think all the problems we have right now in academia result from those two roots. And the public, is losing some of the trust in our academic institutions because of that.
Avi, before we let you go, tell us a few of your most out there ideas that get you in hot water or get people maybe doing a double take at a dinner party.
You should ask them about that, because to me, all of the ideas sound completely natural. I'm not trying to be provocative. For example, with respect to 3i Atlas, I did not reach out to any news agency. I did not. I just wrote my papers, and then the New York Post didn't interview me. They just wrote a big sensational story, and that was picked up by other journalists, and then it became viral. And then, so I'm sorry, but the one thing about my life that I don't fully understand is, to me, everything I say makes sense. It sounds like common sense, and I don't expect it to be unusual. And in fact, when people tell me that it sounds strange or unusual, I'm surprised. But on the other hand, it was a benefit for me, because otherwise I would not get tenure at Harvard. I got tenured within 3 years, and I got my PhD at age 24. Now, if you ask how is that possible, it's because for some reason other people do not have these ideas. I'm not good at computers, for example. When I finished my PhD and I came to visit the Institute for Advanced Study at Princeton, the person there that offered me a 5-year fellowship, John Bacall, he asked me, what computer languages are you using? And I said, well, I'm just using programs that can allow me to solve ordinary differential equations. And otherwise, I don't care much about computers. And he said, how do you think you will have a career? That was 1986. And the only reason I managed to have a career is because I think of ideas that other people do not think about. Now, you ask me, how is that possible? If other people had the same ideas, then nobody would care about me. I would never be reported about by the New York Post. I would never get the attention that I get, like, a dozen TV stations over the past few days. I would never get to appear in 4,000 podcasts over the past 5 years. But miraculously, it doesn't come up in the minds of other people. I don't know why.